We get started.
Receiving your content. Stream health green. All right. Let's see how this goes. I think we're live everywhere now.
Cool. Hi, everybody. We are going live here for the first time ever.
Everywhere.
On Instagram and YouTube as well, if you prefer to watch on YouTube. Yeah, so hope you guys are all doing well. We decided we wanted to try this live thing every now and then and just answer some questions that we get often in this format. Recently we did this vlog about how we just spent a week apart for the first time in like 9 months, and people were like, oh my god, you spent so much time. Like, how do you not kill each other? So we figured we'd tackle that because we don't usually want to kill each other, which is kind of cool.
I'm still alive. She's still alive. So that's pretty good.
And we live in like 100 square feet. So yeah, I think that takes some work, and it's definitely like a question that we see a lot, like on our feeds or like other van life people. Like a lot of people are like, oh, like I want to live in a van, but like my wife or boyfriend would hate it or whatnot. And it's kind of usually the wife. I don't want to be sexist, but that's the comment I usually see.
And there are issues living in a van. It's definitely harder. I think we were talking about this yesterday, and Sid said, take any problem that you have living in a house and magnify it. So it's really true. Like, you're so close together all the time that it can be stressful, and small annoyances become big annoyances when they really don't need to.
And I think like really the reason that this has worked so well for us and is that like our entire relationship has been living nomadically in one way or another.
And the van is big compared to the little orange car that we lived in first.
Yeah,
that was really small.
Like, Mackie lived in my dorm room for a while. That was probably the hardest, really, way harder than living in a van.
The twin bed was smaller than the really nice, not twin.
Yeah, now like, a sweet bed.
Yeah, our bed is bigger in the van than it was in Sid's dorm.
So yeah, I think that's like definitely important to keep in mind. We definitely haven't been in that situation where like we have a big comfortable house and blah blah blah, and then we like downsize to a van and have to work through that. We haven't ever had a house, so
I think
that's good.
Quickly we should just give a brief intro to who we are and what we do.
New.
Hopefully there's some new people on here, but so I'm Mackie.
I'm Sid.
And we both race mountain bikes professionally and live in a van and travel the United States and the world. Obviously, when we're traveling internationally, we do not have our van. But we basically live out of the van and travel around and just chase races and train and explore new parts of the country and the bike riding there. We actually are not in the van at the moment,
obviously,
as you can see.
Have tapestries in the van.
Yeah. But we're at Sid's parents' house in Ohio, between a race in Vermont and a race in West Virginia. So we flew out here and met up with them, raced last weekend, or Sid raced last weekend. I got stitches last weekend.
Stitches. Wah, wah. We did do a vlog on that on YouTube if you want to catch up and see some really gory
pictures.
Pictures of Mackie's arm, mouth. That's always an option.
Yeah.
But we won't get into that right now.
So then we drove down here to Ohio, and now we're hanging out for a couple of weeks. I'm trying to heal up and get the stitches out and get back to training. Sid's recovering from the race and then continuing to, train and stuff. And then we're going to go race in West Virginia. And then after that, we'll fly back to Salt Lake City and pick up our van and be back in the van. But that's why we are in a house and not in a van.
So anyway, I guess like as a couple, we deal with a lot of stress and adverse situations, and it's kind of always been like that. So like Oh, the shirts. Someone just asked about the shirts. These are from a company called Psychological, like cycle, like as in bikes, logical. And they do absolutely
Yeah.
awesome designs. I didn't even realize we were
This is
both
my
wearing their
4th of
designs. That
July
was not
T-shirt.
intentional at all. But yeah, their stuff is sweet. You should check it out.
So.
Anyway, we spent a crap ton of time together, and I think the main reason that it really works is that we both have similar goals and communicate that really well. I think a lot of times when you see people who are like, oh, I really want to live in a van, but my significant other doesn't, like, there might just be like a bit of a communication breakdown there. So if you're in that position, like, my advice would be like,
communicate.
And like, what is your significant other's biggest problem with living in a van? Is it like not having access to showers or bathrooms, or is it something like a little bit more like they think you're being irresponsible for leaving your job to live in a van, or they think you can't afford that, and like you might have to change the way you want to do that. Where are we right now? We are in Athens, Ohio, which is where I grew up, and we're at my parents' house because we're doing a race in West Virginia in a week and a half. So we're all over the place.
That's why we're not in the van. You were saying. So like part of it depends. It could be because of like the van. It could be because of the lifestyle that the person doesn't feel comfortable
Sarah,
with.
Yes, communication is key.
But like it can be some combo of the two. But really, if you sit down and talk about it and you're like, hey, this is what I want to do, and the person says, I don't want to do that, try to find out why. And, we happen to live in a van, and there's not a shower in the van, and there's not a toilet in the van, and that works for us because we've figured out how to do it. But for some people, that might be a deal breaker. And if that's the case, that's okay. Like, you discuss, like, an RV
not for everyone.
Yeah, but I mean, there's also other options, like an RV or, a Sprinter van that's got a nicer setup than we have. There's all sorts of different ways you can do it. So, like, I think that's important to communicate and find out what the problem is or what the reason is that your significant other is not as interested in it. I think that's worth.
Yeah, and we got a question on Instagram, how do we travel cheaply? And I think that actually does really fit in with this topic because money is such a huge issue for relationships. And so basically we make money nomadically in that we make money through sponsorship and freelance work. And I don't think we'll get into like the nitty gritty of that right now. We definitely want to do a live chat at some point about like how we make money via sponsorship. But
and if you check out some of our other
we have some
YouTube videos, the Real Talk ones, we talk about some of our ways that we
But basically,
money,
like, we don't make millions of dollars doing that, obviously, which is
that would be cool.
which would be sweet. That's why we have the van that we do have instead of something a little bit nicer. But I also think we both like have really established like things that we enjoy spending money on, and we do spend money on things that bring us joy or make our life easier. And I think for a lot of couples, that's like definitely it can traveling cheaply can be super stressful because you're like, oh, I can't do but you can't do all the stuff that you want to do. But I think if you have similar goals, then that can be fine. Like we don't care that much about like going to bars or getting fancy drinks or anything, and that's like mutual, so we don't spend money on that.
We also have learned that there are certain things that if we spend money on it, it makes our lives better. It makes us like it makes our relationship easier, and problems aren't as big a deal. And like the big one for us is food. And
we spend most of our money on food if we're not spending it on bike races.
And so we've like been careful to like figure out that both of us get hangry. And so we're like, okay, how do we avoid the issues that come from us being hangry? And it's just accepting that we need to eat. And so we'll be driving and it's like, okay, we're really hungry. Like, we don't have time to stop and cook a meal like we normally would, because that's usually what we do is, we have a double burner stove that we open up in a propane tank and we cook our own meals. But a lot of the time there isn't time to do that. And so we'll just like go to a grocery store and go to the deli spot and go and buy food. And that's really a great way, and it makes our relationship easier because like stuff that's not a big deal becomes a huge deal if we're hungry. And if we're just like, hey, we're gonna like eat.
I think you see this across the board, like with every like other couple I've ever hung out with is like people just suck when they're hungry.
Including us.
And you usually like take it out on your significant other. And I think if you have a bigger house and you have more space and you have like really set routines, you don't get to that like hangry point as often as you do when you're living in a van and like stuff is happening and like things take longer than you think, and then like all of a sudden it's like 3 p.m. and you haven't eaten yet or something. And so I think that is something to be aware of, that like, yeah, maybe you have all this stress when you're traveling with your partner, but like maybe a lot of it is just like totally related to like not eating on schedule. It's like my grand theory of life that most problems are related to food. We had a question a few up asking where we sleep at night in the van, where we park, and if we've had any scary situations.
I'm not sure
haven't had any scary situations at all. I mean, I think that's definitely something that a lot of women worry about when they're like getting into van life. We've been really lucky in that regard. We haven't gotten kicked out of a parking spot or anything. We usually try to just go to campsites basically, or like BLM land, National Forest land. Since we're usually going places with bike races, it's usually like pretty easy to find somewhere that is safe and rural.
Most race promoters know that a lot of people want to camp or van camp, and so they're basically trying to make sure that there's camping.
We stay in friends' driveways a lot if we're going anywhere more urban.
And we just try to stay out of cities because our van is not set up for stealth camping.
At all,
like you have to pop the bed up on top. So we've learned to just go try to find other places instead.
That was Mackie's phone. It makes
Sorry.
a lot of noise.
But anyway, so going back to kind of talking about the relationship stuff, communication is probably the biggest one for us. And, we accept that we may not always want to do the same thing at the same time. And, sometimes one of us is tired or hungry or whatever. And if it's not something you can deal with immediately, don't shake my hand around?
No, I was just trying to get you to swipe over to the other screen so we can see if anyone said anything on YouTube.
Gotcha, sorry.
Yeah, my jaw is better, I think. Thanks for asking. We also definitely agree with what Daniel said. Don't make any decisions on an empty stomach. Don't get in fights on an empty stomach.
Yeah. If something seems like it's being a big deal, like if someone's making a big deal of something, we're like, okay, is this actually a big deal, or is one of us hungry? And if one of us hungry, we're like, we're not going to talk about this anymore. We're going to deal with the hungry part first. But that's what we were saying is sometimes someone's hungry. That's an easy one. You feed them. Sometimes somebody's tired. That's a little bit harder. Like, yeah, okay, you can say go take a nap or whatever, go take some time. But there's just both of us have learned to kind of stop and say, okay, I'm frustrated about this. I'm making a big deal about this. Why? And if it's like this has been an ongoing problem and we really need to discuss it, okay, it's an ongoing problem, you need to discuss it. But a lot of the time it's like someone's just tired and you're like, okay, I can acknowledge that I'm just in a grumpy mood because, I don't know, my training workout didn't go as well as I wanted. And then you just have to make the conscious decision to relax, be like, okay, this is not a big deal. I'm not going to make a fuss about it. I'm going to go take a nap. I'm going to go relax. I'm going to do something fun. And then move on, and and that helps a lot. Both of us being willing and able to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like we said at the beginning, I don't think there's really anything about living in a van that necessarily makes relationships harder. I think it just sort of magnifies the issues that you would maybe not have to deal with if you weren't living in a van or traveling. And I think that's why people often say, like, travel with your partner. Like, that's like,
It's a good way to get to know them
Yeah.
and see, like, how well can you, like, do you travel well together?
Right. And that doesn't mean you have to, like, live in a van together for the rest of your lives. Like, that's not our plan at all. But I think, like, we've learned a lot of just, like, I think you learn a lot of self-awareness when you're in a small place with another person. Like, just, like, talking about the eating thing or being tired, but, like, I think it's really just powerful to be able to be like, maybe this is about me, you know, like, what's going on right now? Am I hungry? Am I tired? Like how can I work through that and not, like, say things that I'm gonna regret later, or do things that I'm gonna regret later.
And I think that's true from, like, for relationships in general,
Right, of
not
course.
just in a van. Like, if it's about you, just acknowledge that it's about you. You know, hey, this is something that I'm having a problem with. Are you willing to talk about it? Can we, can we discuss this? Can we figure this out? And yeah, sometimes you can, and sometimes you're like, right now is not a good time because we're both stressed out, or we're both, we've been driving for 10 hours and we're exhausted. Like, let's put this on hold and let's discuss this tomorrow. And that's a huge thing to be able to say to your significant other, and definitely worth saying.
Yeah.
Definitely worth doing. So let's see, other stuff that we wanted to mention. We don't have a lot of alone time since we live in a van together, and it's small, and we pretty much do everything together. Like, we train together, and we race the same races, and we live in a van, and we travel together, and we have a business together. Like, we do a lot of stuff together, and being able to figure out how to get some alone time is, I think, a big part of what makes it work. Is, like, sometimes that's just doing things by yourself. Like, I'm just gonna, like, ignore you for a little while, and I'm gonna read my own book, and I'm just gonna, like, hang out over here. Like, I'm gonna go work on the bikes, and, like, I don't want anybody to talk to me, and I don't, like, that's important. And sometimes you can just say, like, I need alone time. And if you tell somebody that, then they're a lot more likely to be like, okay, you need alone time. I'm going to let you do your thing, and I'm going to go do my thing, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah. Someone just asked, how do I convince my girlfriend to travel with me?
It's a good question.
It is a good question. I think, that's, like we were saying earlier, you have to just kind of get to, like, the crux of the issue of why she might not want to travel, and that's gonna be different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, someone, it might be like a lack of those comforts that you have at home, like a lack of, like, knowing where your stuff is and, like, routine. Like, there might be just some fear involved too. Like, it's scary to do something new. And then, just, like, not everyone loves traveling.
Yeah. And I think we'll do a live session about this, because it's like, we've done a lot of traveling, and I think it's something that people would enjoy. But I'd say communication is the first part, and then the second part is, you don't have to go big on the first time. Like, your first trip doesn't have to be to the other side of the world, to a country where you don't speak the language. Like, go camping for a weekend.
Yeah. Especially if, like, both of you haven't traveled and one person has some serious reservations. Like, don't bite off something that's over your head as well.
It'll make your relationship stronger if it's successful, and it will probably make you break
go
up if it's not successful. So be careful.
We're not being very positive here. Better question is, how do we convince our parents? Well, yeah, that's not something we have to worry about, because we're old. Not actually.
Well,
we're not that
our parents are supportive of what we do, so we're fortunate. Let's see. So on YouTube here, David just asked, have I ever do I just go out with the guys, and, like, go do stuff with just my friends? And that's part of this getting, like, alone time, is I do sometimes do that. Like, sometimes I'll go and ride dirt bikes with my friends, or just go ride with my friends, or, and a lot of the time we try to coordinate our training schedules so that we get to train together. But sometimes we're like, our our training schedules don't work, or one of us is like, today I have a recovery day, or sometimes we're just like, hey, I want to go do my own thing, and so I'll just go and do my own thing. And Sid does the same thing sometimes. She's like, I want to go ride with these people. These are my friends. I want some time with just them, and that's totally fine. And that's important, really, because then, like, when you do come back together, you've had some time alone to sort of have your own space, even if it's like your space with other people. And then both people are like, cool, that's, we had some time alone, and now we're happier to see each other, and that's more, we're having more fun together than we were before we had that time.
And I think that just, like, all relationships are different to a certain extent. I think for some people it's really important to have those friend groups outside of the relationship. I would say that's somewhat less important to us, and part of that is circumstantial because we travel so much that we don't really have, like, a group of friends that we hang out with. We have a lot of, like, friends in different places that we hang out with together, and that's, like, couples, single people, whatever. So I don't think that's, like, a huge aspect of our relationship, but I think if it's a big aspect for you at home, then you're going to have to find that time to do that when you're traveling or living in a van as well.
And try to figure out how to do that. Because, if you're not in one place for an extended period of time, it's hard to make a group of friends because most people are. And so what we end up doing is we see different groups of friends at different events, but it's frequently like there are other people who travel in some of the same series that we do. So we'll see them every weekend and we'll hang out then. And, like I just hung out with some friends in Kellogg, Idaho at a race a couple weeks ago, and I hadn't seen them since sometime last year, and it was just really fun to see them again. And it was kind of sad because I'm like, I wish I got to see these people more often because they're good friends of mine. But I acknowledge that living on the road, it's hard to do that. It's hard to make that happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Should we
Let's see.
wrap
Well,
up?
there's
You got any other?
Some other stuff we wanted to mention. Yeah, I think one thing I'd like to say is make sure if you are spending all your time together, like we do, that it doesn't just become like routine, that everything is like logistics and work and, traveling, like driving and stuff. Like you need to have some time as a couple having fun together, because otherwise it's just like, oh, this is just a person that I happen to be around all the time. And like you need to have fun together, like have a date night, put aside 1 week, one night a week to like not do anything work related and just sit down and like have fun together and have a conversation or discuss something. Or we read books together. We're like, we'll take turns reading at night, and that's really nice because it's time where we're doing something together that's not work related or training related, and we really have fun together doing that.
Yeah.
Let's see. I want to see if there was anything else.
Where are you? Oh. Mackie takes notes. I just wing it.
I take notes. It just wings it.
Just say whatever comes into my head.
I think the one other thing I want to mention, the one other thing I want to mention,
other thing,
is if you're gonna live in a van with somebody, you pretty much need to just accept them as they are. And this, once again, this is just relationship advice in general that becomes even more important in a van. Is some people want to travel and live in a van, and some people don't. And if you guys have decided together to do that, great. But some people, like one of the people in the couple may decide that like the max they can drive in a day is 2 hours. And like, if that's the case, that's fine. You just have to like figure out, okay, how are we going to get from this place to this place in the amount of time that we have with only driving 2 hours? And instead of trying to like force them to do more or do something different, let them, like, that's okay. It's, uh-oh, we're paused.
We lost Instagram.
Lost Instagram. Hopefully this one's good. But,
we're back.
We're back, good. So, just accept that, like, different people have different levels of comfort with traveling, with living in a van, with not having toilets, with not having showers, and and just work together on that. Like, you can have a strong relationship in a van. In a lot of ways, it brings you closer because you have to learn how to work through relationship things that are hard. So be willing to do that, and and communicate and have fun together, because living in a van is pretty cool, and having a strong relationship is pretty cool, and they require a lot of work, but they're really fun.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
I think we'll wrap this up because we're having some connection issues.
Yeah. But thanks everybody
thanks
for tuning in.
It's good to hear from all of you, and yeah, we'll be back next week. We'll keep you updated on Instagram and about when we're going to do it. So looking forward to seeing you again.
I'll see you guys next week.
All right.